Hmm. Oh, cool.
Somewhere in a remote, uncharted region of the planet called Earth.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the
Oh, yeah.
unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh,
And
cool.
remember, my friend,
Oh,
events
nice.
such as
Very
these
nice.
will affect you in the future.
Time and space. Contact has been established. We now transmit you direct.
Tales from the Silent... And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to Atop the Fourth Wall. We're bad... No, that's somebody else's channel. That's not this one. This is Tales from the Silent Planet. And, of course, I'm Daniel, and I'm joined by the Intrepid, the wonderful Eric Hawkins. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm doing great. It's Friday. I'm home from work. My one day a week, I actually go into the office. The rest of the time I work from home. But it's going good.
Yeah? Well, I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. And, of course, you're doing well because your Zombieful World of Oz comic book on Kickstarter is fully funded.
Yeah, I funded in 1 hour and 28 minutes.
Man.
I know because I kept sitting there going refresh.
That's awesome. And how does that compare to the first two campaigns? So this is the third book in the series.
Yep, this is the third book. The first book funded in 7 days. The second book funded in, I believe it was like 4 hours. 4 hours, 6 hours, something like that. It was fairly quick. And this one, just the 1 hour and 28 minutes. So I was pretty happy.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. I of course, am a big fan of these books, and I have read them and enjoyed them and highly recommend them. And the link is in the description for anybody that wants to check it out. What do you think has been the key to keeping people's interest? So a lot of people will launch a comic book on these crowdfunding websites. They'll go independent. They'll put out a comic book, and then they have trouble getting those same people to go to the next book. But you've managed to not only keep people, but it seems like gain people. Why do you think that is?
I think it is because they keep coming out on time, and I keep, talking them up that, and people see that, I like the Wizard of Oz. They see I like drawing. I'm on Chester Busby's channel every week, drawing every week on his little competition there. But yeah, I talk it up. I've gotten both books shipped out on time. First two campaigns. Plan to with this one as well. And I've done some other art for some other people that their campaigns have come out on time. So yeah, I think it's people find me somewhat of a reliable artist to get stuff delivered to them.
Building up that goodwill with people by actually delivering what you've promised. What a radical idea for
it's crazy
selling things. I bought it because I had sort of gotten to know you a little bit, and I bought the first one, and I like the Oz world, the world of Oz, as it were, but I wasn't too sold on the Zombieful part. I'm not huge into zombie stuff. Most of the zombie stuff, I'm like, nah. I remember the other day, I think you were watching channel, and I was like, I hate zombie stuff, and somebody's like, except for when it's in the world of Oz, right? And I was like, oh yes, not that. But why? Well, why Oz, man? Why zombies? Let's just go there.
Yeah, well, we'll start. Okay. first, it started out being a comic book about circus freaks. That's what I was going to be. I'd seen this music video and it kind of inspired me to do like circus freak comic book. I'm like, that would be kind of cool. People might dig that. And then as I was designing the characters and, with the top hats for the ringmaster and all that, it started to look steampunkish. So then I was like, well, maybe I should do some steampunky. Mm-hmm. Then I've always liked The Wizard of Oz, and I think it was probably around the time it came on TV, and I was watching it, and I was like, oh, hey, I think that's in public domain. What if I do a little twist on The Wizard of Oz where it's steampunk? I redesigned the characters. And then I caught The Walking Dead, which I'll be honest with you. When The Walking Dead comic came out, I'm like, oh, good grief. When is the zombie craze going to stop? I'm sick of zombies.
Right.
And then so I didn't pick the comic book up. I didn't watch a show when it first came out until like a year later. I think my brother had bought it on DVD. It was like $5. You got the whole season because there was only like 8 episodes. Mm-hmm. And I watched it. I actually liked it. I liked the first seasons. And so I started reading a little bit of the comic book. I was like, oh, zombies would be kind of cool. How can I incorporate them into the Wizard of Oz and the steampunk thing? And then I was like, oh, I got it. I know where the zombies come from. And I was at a convention just 2 weeks ago in Hannibal, Missouri. Birthplace of Mark Twain, by the way.
Okay.
And I was explaining to some of the people coming by, and there was this one kid, he's probably in his mid-teens. I was telling him about the story, and he right away figured out where the zombies came from. And I've never told it to anyone, really. And it's going to be in the 3rd issue. You'll find out why. But I was like, yeah, that is exactly where they came from.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I've been waiting for in the story. Is like, okay, what's going on exactly? What's happening? So there's been a lot of cool moments and sad moments and everything, and just 2 issues where I'm already hooked and engaged in the story. But now I'm like, I want to know the secrets. What's going on? And you've done a good job, and apparently the youngsters are able to figure it out.
Thank you.
So.
Well, I'll tell you about issue 3. If people don't cry at least one of the scenes, I've done something wrong with the writing.
Oh man. You're killing me. So yeah, I too watched The Walking Dead, like the first episode, and I had read the comic. I bought the big compendium of that they sold in the first one, and I read it, and I was just, all right. I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't have any interest in this. And then I watched like half of the first episode, and I was like, I'm done with zombies. And one of the things that I liked about your book is that it's not so much about the zombies, but it's about these characters around the zombies. And the zombies are, they're not like the big problem, but at the same time,
not at all.
But at the same time, one of the things that I think happens with zombie stuff too often is like it's just like a soap opera that plays out in a zombie apocalypse. And while that can be fun for a little while, I just get tired of soap operas. And to have a villain that's like, there's villainous things happening around the zombies. Yeah, I'm on board with that. It's not too soap opera-y.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the 3rd issue it's very light on the zombies.
Well, there you go.
Well, it goes well if you've read issue 2, Dorothy was kidnapped.
Right.
Princess Ozma was already kidnapped. The Lion, Scarecrow, and Tin Woodman, they suck at being, the heroes and keeping Dorothy safe. So
kind of their job.
Yeah, they're not doing too good. So it starts out kind of dark, and they gotta go get the girls.
Nice. Well, what kind of inspires you when you are writing and coming up with these plot lines and everything? Are there things that have inspired you outside of the obvious, like zombie fiction and the world of Oz itself? Has there been anything that you would say, this I've definitely learned from? It could be thematic, it could be story wise. Is there anything like that?
I spent most of my younger years reading comic books, so that was inspirational back in the 80s and mostly. So I take from a lot of stories from there. But man, I guess it's just movies and comic books and music. I love listening to music when I'm drawing, and it depends on what I'm listening to, what comes in my head when I'm writing the stories. A couple of the scenes they just came to me while I was driving home from work, sitting in traffic. And the reason I said if that doesn't make some people cry when they read it, I've done something wrong, because I started to tear up when I was writing it in my head.
So what was your big comic book that you had to get every week as a kid?
Oh, it was Uncanny X-Men.
Uncanny X-Men.
And G.I. Joe.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, you're a big G.I. Joe fan, are you? Where's the proof?
Well, there we go.
There you go. I know some people in the chat will recognize that. I as a kid, that was a tattoo that I thought, well, if I ever get a tattoo, I'll get that. And then, of course, as an adult, I've of course chickened out, and I'm not cool enough to get that tattoo.
Well, I've got 3 tattoos. One covers a good portion of my back. I got one up here, but I always had a rule that all my tattoos would not be visible, because I work in an office most of the time. And when I turned 40, I said, well, I don't care anymore. I've wanted this tattoo since 1984. It's just some lines. It's nothing obscene or anything.
Right.
I don't care.
I could imagine, though, somebody looking at it and being like, what? They don't know. They don't know.
Why do you
it's
have a
J.J.
brick wall on your arm? That's what I get all the time.
It's like, but the people that give you the nod, like, yeah.
Oh, like Ming Chen from the Comic Book Men.
Oh, yeah? He saw it?
Yeah, when I saw him last at the con a couple of weeks ago, he had already seen my tattoo when I came up to him and gave him the books and had him look through them and stuff. And he's like, oh, man, anything for a guy with that tattoo.
Nice. So Uncanny X-Men, if people don't know, that would have been Chris Claremont writing that, and some John Byrne art in there, I'm sure.
John Byrne, Silvestri, Lee towards the end. Who else was doing it? There's all kinds of great artists all through that run, because I started 213. I got 213 on, but I caught a few issues before that, because I was a young teen, and it wasn't comic shops to go to. As if I caught it at the gas station. Oh, there it is. Right.
So what was it about that comic in particular that kept you coming back to it, where it was like, I've got to try to look for that at the 7-Eleven?
It was the comradeship of the team. I mean, they fought as a team. They had troubles, and someone always after them. And Claremont's storytelling was just, I loved it. Detailed, and it just kept me coming back. I wanted to read more as soon as. If I want to read more when I'm done with the comic book, it's good, because I bought a couple comic books lately. I didn't want to read anymore.
Right. That's the danger of crowdfunding. I haven't gone to the comic book shop in a really long time. The most recent time I went, it was because Aaron Lopresti was at a comic book shop not far from where I live. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll go over there and see Aaron, because I watch his stream a lot and talk to him, and he wanted me to come out there. He's like, oh, you better come out there. You better show up. All right. So I went out there and met him in person, and that was that was the most recent time I've been in a comic shop for like 10 years. And but the thing about independent comics is you don't always get the opportunity to read through it, to leaf through an issue. In the comic book shop, I can pick it up, I can look through it, and I could decide, oh, I like this. This looks good. I'm going to pick it up. Yeah. Whereas with indie comics, you don't have that opportunity. And something that you've done is you've put out the first issue for people to read through. Mm-hmm. They can look at it and they can get a sense of story, of what's going on. And I think that's a pretty decent thing to do, to give people an idea of what's going on, because so often I've gotten a comic from these crowdfunded sources and I'm just like, oh, if I had only known, if I'd been able to read something prior to this, I probably wouldn't have got it.
I've gotten a few like that, but the Zombieful World of Oz #1, I waited until it was 6 months after I had fulfilled it, and I put it on Webtoon for free. Mm-hmm. Broke it up. That's a lot of work. Tear your comic back down and put it out there. I was going to do it with 2, but I haven't done it yet. It's just too much work, and I got too much to do. And then I put it on Comics Underground for free if anyone wanted to download it there. Because I was getting ready to launch #2, and if anyone wanted to read it, they could see what the story was about, see if they liked the story, see if they liked my art. It was just I think it was a good decision to let people know what they would be getting. Because, like you said, you can't thumb through it. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, most of the time, a lot of these crowdfunded things, I mean, the images they put up aren't even in the book. It's like they've just done promotional images and put on the site.
Right. And unless it's somebody who has a pedigree doing things before this that you can have an idea.
Right.
Otherwise you're just looking at pretty pictures, and we know what happened when it was just about pretty pictures, the industry, and it didn't end so well. So what made you want to draw comics? So you went from being a person that read the G.I. Joe, read the Uncanny X-Men, got the other comics you liked, and then you had interest in drawing. What led to that point?
Well, I've always drawn as far back as I can remember. I've always liked to draw, and then like especially like Garfield. I draw Garfield all the time. I don't know why I was obsessed with Garfield, but I was drawing him for everybody when I was a kid. High school, I started drawing characters, comic book characters for people for like $0.25 a piece. Really low commission rates at that time.
Hey man.
Yeah.
when comic books don't cost all that much, that's a good chunk of change.
Oh yeah, that's half a comic book right there. And then the more I read comics, and the more I thought that might be something I could do. I like the storytelling. I would like to tell a story. Of course, being a young teen and collecting Marvel, I wanted to work for Marvel, obviously. But obviously, with the rejection letters I got, they didn't want me to work for them. So, that I kind of just put it on the back burner and, started working. And then I would draw occasionally for people. Then probably about 10 years ago, I started drawing again really hard and heavy and practicing again. And decided, it's probably right around there is when I first started hearing about people crowdfunding stuff. I mean, it was real small back then. But I was like, well, if I can't get in with a company, maybe I could do something with my own characters, do my own book where I have complete control.
Right.
And then I'll be the boss of myself. So I decided that Oz wasn't the first book I wanted to do, but I thought this was the first book I could do. Zombies, a well-known property.
Right.
That's in public domain. They can't get me in trouble unless I do something stupid.
Yeah, like put some red shoes in there and
yeah. So that would get me some recognition. People see my art, see me, realize what I can do and stuff, and then maybe I can move on to my own comic book, like universe. But I need a little help with that, because drawing and writing everything yourself is kind of laborious. Right?
Yeah. Like I don't know how many projects I've started at this point, but the first thing I did to just try to get back into drawing when I decided, I'm going to try to do something, was a webtoons thing called Peter the Problematic Person. And it's like even the stream of consciousness, like ideas that I do for that, it just takes so long to try to like actually come up with something that is any kind of compelling. And then anything outside of that it's a lot of work. And I applaud people back in the day like Jack Kirby, who was able to draw multiple comics every month, and he was plotting them and he was doing all this stuff. And it's like, man, that's a ton of work. It's a ton of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. And I've done, especially with the Oz stuff, I've done research on all the books that Baum wrote, not the ones after that, but there's a lot of creepy stuff out there. And I want to try to stay as true to the characters as I can and just make the story more of a continuation of the books.
Right.
But that's a lot of research, just reading all the books.
Well, see, I like that. So I think a lot of people, they want to use Sherlock Holmes. They want to use one of these public domain characters. And instead of looking into the source material, what's been told before, what do we have as a base to grow out of? They're just like my ideas of what the characters are, instead of trying to be true to them. So you actually went back and you looked at those books, you read those books, you researched them and tried to get an idea of what you thought the characters were as Baum represented them in the world. And then you tried to grow out of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the things that you've discovered that may not be too spoilery for things coming?
You got Princess Langwidere, who she won't show up in this book, but she's going to show up in future books. I got plenty of books coming on, or in my head. She if you saw Return to Oz, the movie, which I didn't actually see that one until a couple of years ago.
Same here.
So they have Witch Mombi in there who switches all of her heads. Yeah. But that's in the books, it's Princess Langwidere.
Okay.
Who switches. And Mombi's a total different character. Mombi is the witch that had Ozma, who the wizard kidnapped Ozma because she was the true ruler of Oz, gave her to Witch Mombi, and Witch Mombi turned her into a little boy. And so he could rule Oz. So the wizard could rule Oz. So the wizard's not really that good of a guy.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
And he might end up not being that good of a guy in my book.
Uh-oh.
But eventually, Ozma, and I can't remember if it's Pip or Tip, that was her boy name. He created Jack Pumpkinhead. And in my book, Jack Pumpkinhead has he's a little infatuated with Ozma. That's because she created him. So, like things like that, if you just saw the movie, you'd never know anything like that. If you saw, any of the other movies, you wouldn't know that. The Tin Woodman, I think it was Mombi. No, it was the Wicked Witch of the East had cursed his axe, and he cut off all of his limbs.
Yep, I did know that one.
His body was replaced by 10 pieces all the time. And that happened to someone else, too. Captain Fighter. He was in love with the same Munchkin girl that the Tin Man was. But he had a sword, and she cursed his sword, and he chopped off all of his limbs. And he's the only other Tin Man in Oz. He might show up in issue 4.
Right. So people don't go back and read it, and they only have like the classic movie in their head a lot of the time. And if maybe they've seen Return to Oz and it's a little bit darker, but they don't realize just everything's been so Disney-fied. Post Disney, fairy tales and children's fantasy stories are a lot more tame, and they're not as scary. And we think about some of these ideas and some of the things that you've just said right there. Obviously, chopping off someone's limbs, that's a little dark, but turning into a boy and all this stuff. And it's like these fears that kids have of all these things. And they're able to, through this literature, think about them in a safe way where the ending is hopefully a little bit happy, where, Dorothy doesn't get the electroshock therapy or something.
Yeah.
But why do you think, these stories have stuck around in the consciousness, I think mainly because of the movie, but they haven't, no one else has really tried to go and do much with them. Or if they do, it's a total reimagination. Why do you think there hasn't been a good continuation like you're doing, or an adaptation of clearly something that has cultural value?
I think it all stems back to the movie. People think that's the only thing Oz. A lot of people don't even realize there's a whole series of books.
Yeah.
So almost everybody's seen The Wizard of Oz since they were a little kid, because it started coming on TV. Right. And it just came on every year, and now people can own movies and watch them anytime they want. But I think that movie has ingrained itself in everybody's mind that is Oz. That's the only story of Oz. Disney tried to do that movie with James Franco. That didn't do too well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Return to Oz, everybody thought that was too dark. They thought it was a direct sequel to the previous movie, but it was more a sequel to the book, and nobody realized that, so it failed.
Right.
Even though it was a combination of a couple books. And a new sequel, not a new sequel, but a new Oz movies was announced and went into production. And I'm in a bunch of Oz groups on Facebook. They don't like you posting stuff that you're selling, though.
No.
But it's interesting to read. All these people are upset because they think they're remaking the Judy Garland movie, but they're not going to. They are actually making a movie based on the book. That won't be a musical and stuff like that. So everybody's upset thinking they're trying to remake the original movie,
right? But
because people are that's all they think is out there is the movie.
It's one of those weird things where usually something based on a book, it doesn't replace the book most of the time.
No,
in terms of the cultural influence. Now, it might be something that only somebody's only seen the movie adaptation of something, but the kind of the attitude towards the original book still exists. Like we think of Mark Twain adaptions or something. The book never gets replaced in terms of that cultural icon being the original book. And so when somebody makes an adaptation, no one thinks, oh, that's going to be a remake of this. But that movie was so huge. And like you said, it kept being shown on TV, and we heard all the music, and everybody knows the song. And it's like all of those things have become so popular that it's you're right, like people just don't accept it. Like, no, it's just a remake of that movie. It's like, well, no,
Yeah.
it was a book series before. It was a book series before.
You know, except Wicked. Everybody seemed to accept Wicked.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that's because it was it started as a Broadway. Well, I mean, not even a movie yet, but a Broadway musical, and so that. Well, it was a book series too, I suppose. Before that, I don't know, man. It's interesting to think like why something that's so huge in pop culture, like why hasn't it been tried more? Because every few years they make a Robin Hood movie. And there's always something with Sherlock Holmes and all these other characters, Dracula constantly being used, anything in the public domain, Frankenstein, all the time. And yet here's one where there's this rich universe. It's basic, you know, it's a lot like the Chronicles of Narnia. When the Chronicles of Narnia go into the public domain, I would imagine that there's going to be a lot more adaptions of the work, and there's going to be people playing in that universe. But here's a huge fantasy universe that has all of these recognizable characters and imagery, and it's not being used. And it's interesting to think about, at least.
And you know, when it is used, you don't hear much about it. I think there's a cartoon that came out a couple of years ago, and it's on Netflix. Once Upon a Time, that Disney show that was kind of originally supposed to be Fables, but then they said, oh, these are all public domain characters anyway. We don't need Fables.
Right.
We just do it ourselves. They brought in the Wicked Witch, but that was about Dorothy might have been there too. I kind of stopped watching. It got boring after that. But you know, there's been some cartoons. There was Tin Man?
Yeah,
was
Zoe Deschanel.
Station?
With Zoe Deschanel. Yeah.
I mean, there's been some stuff out there, but it's not been popular, and there's rabid fans out there, so I think they just all love the movie, so it's hard to get in. But there's some other comic books out there, especially indie comic books. There's a Samurai Oz, there's a Western Oz, then there's a militant Oz and a futuristic Oz.
Yeah. Well, then there was the adaptions of the books by for Marvel. Was
Scotty Young?
Yeah, Scotty Young. Yeah, he did those, and I remember I think I bought one of those for somebody that wasn't really into comic books. So I was like, hey, this might be something they'd be interested in. And I think it's interesting. Like with comic books, I think that audience that reads comic books is more willing to accept an adaptation like that or a continuation of a series like that and not think, oh, it's just a remake of the movie. But if you do it any other medium, they're like, oh, what is this? I'm not too sure. I wonder what the difference is.
I just learned tonight that there was a Oz comic based on the movie. It was an adaptation of the movie that came out in the early 70s, 71 or 72. And apparently it's very rare, but it was published by both DC and Marvel at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, their names were both on the comic book.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea until I was watching this guy. He does 10 things you didn't know about movies. Oh, Oz. Well, I'm going to watch this one.
That's interesting. So obviously the world is huge and there's so much, so many places you could go. There's so many stories to tell within that universe that, and places, things to explore. What is the length of the main arc that you're trying to tell? What do you estimate that length to be in terms of the story?
Well, the mini arc ends with issue 3.
Okay.
Then I'm going to jump off into a one shot with issue 4, and that'll be how the Tin Man gets his heart back, his original heart from his flesh body, because that's what's beaten in his big armored chest and that porthole he has. So I'm going to tell how he gets that back, and that's going to be really based on the book when he finds his ex-girlfriend. But I'm taking a different twist with it, or his ex-fiancée. He was supposed to marry her until he got all rusted up in the woods. But then I'm going to continue. Of course, I'm going to bring in Gnome King at one point, Princess Langwidere. The Witch, the Wicked Witch of the West is going to be in it, of course, because, if you have issue 2, she might show up in that one at the end. But she's going to have maybe a little bigger role in issue 3. But I've got, at least 12 issues planned out for sure, and I want to do a lot more than that.
Okay. Awesome. And you're also working on other comics. Do you want to maybe clue us in on some of these other things you've been working on or planning to do?
Secret Comics presents with Nasser Rabadi and Jason Robinson. I did the back cover for that. Go. That's still on Indiegogo. You can go find that one. And other comics in my universe, I want to do a superhero book. He doesn't really have powers, but he might be a little bit of a Moon Knight ripoff called the Emerald Scarab, but he looks really cool. And I've got that story in my head. I got to get out. I might find someone else. As much as I like drawing, I think I like writing a little more.
Okay.
And I might have to find some other people to draw some of this stuff. I've got one character, and this one I probably missed the boat on because he's kind of a vigilante, and he's forced into this because his son got hurt in gang violence. His name is Silence. The book is Code of Silence.
There you go.
So he works for a government agency.
Does he look like Charles Bronson? Because that sounds like something Charles Bronson would have been in.
That could have been. Yeah. That's a good idea. So he works for a government agency, but he used to be a field operative. Then he's older and has kids, so he comes back, into the home offices, and then ends up finding out that the government agency is supplying the gangs with guns.
Uh-oh.
So, and his son gets hurt, so he has to. I had like 24 issues of that all mapped out.
Oh wow, man! See, that's crazy. I've got like the first issue of my comic, and it's like I have no idea what's after that.
I had all kinds of stuff mapped out that I wanted to do at one point, but probably what I'll do if I don't do the Emerald Scarab right after Oz or in between Oz issues, it might be the Hounds of God, which is basically two werewolves. They're Catholic priests that hunt other creatures, for the church.
There you go.
Kind of like Supernatural, but werewolves, and they're not brothers, but And it is based on a guy named Theus,
who was an actual werewolf.
Yeah, he thought he was a werewolf. He told people that twice a year he went down to hell to fight off the witches for the harvest.
Oh, there you go,
man.
Thought
he was nuts.
Well,
So it's based on him. He's actually the main character. So I figure he's a werewolf. He's immortal. He lives all this time.
There
he
you
works
go.
for the church now.
So that's kind of cool. Like, what do you? So do you enjoy that research aspect of it? Does the research come first in some cases, or is it something where you have an idea and you're like, okay, let me support this idea with a nice background, a deep background in history or myth, or how does that work for your writing process?
Well, when I get the idea, I can't just go wild at it. I do have to do some research. I have to get some facts straight and do stuff like that. And I'd say a comic book that made me start researching stuff a lot more and be interested in looking into the backstory of things was it was a cliffhanger title by Image, Crimson,
Okay.
by Humberto Ramos. And it had the Grigori in it and vampires and werewolves. And it was the fact of the Grigori made me want to look into the Watchers and all the angels and different things like that. So I spent probably a couple of years just reading all kinds of stuff about that. So it's the research ends up becoming fun for me, and it takes up a lot of time. That's why, because Oz, I started this 2015 is when I started doing research into it. And didn't get the book out, first issue out to 2019, which I started drawing the book about late 2018. So, but all that leading up to that was world building, researching all the characters, reading the books, so I could be as faithful to the source material as possible.
So I think that's noble, if you will, to put that time and energy into it before you even start to draw. So I think a lot of people, myself included, just like, all right, I got to draw. Where's a character? Oh, there's a character. Okay, let me draw something. And that ends up not being as good a lot of the time.
Mm.
And I think it's cool to hear someone talk about how much preparation goes into it. And it's not just, oh, I've come up with something. Let me try to figure it out as I go along. Little one. Oh, give me a flower. Here we go.
Oh,
That's cute.
Here we are.
I turned something on for him.
Yeah, at a low volume.
Streaming or doesn't matter. Okay.
I've been distracted. I've been derailed from my interview, so
fine.
that's okay.
If
Yeah.
you want to see Derail, I do a comic book review show on Thursday nights called Comic Book Spectrum with 3 other guys. We're all creators. It's on Brian K. Morris's channel or Rising Tide channel on YouTube. We get derailed quite a bit.
Right,
and that's what brought me into buying comics again. I have gone out and I pick a comic to review, and I've kind of stayed away from the big 2. I get like Image or some smaller studios, and most of the stuff, if I go that route, I find stuff I've liked.
Right.
Like this week, I picked up an Image book I just did not care for at all, and I'd let everybody know.
Right. Yeah. When I was buying comics at the store, that would have been like 2010, 2011, 2012. That was like the big time for me where I was going every week. I was buying comics, and I would try out these image comics or whatever caught my eye, and I found that most of them I did like. I was just like, man, this is too esoteric, or this is too pretentious. I'm not interested in this. Not that they all are, but
it seems like I forgot. This is what I bought this week. The Good Asian.
Okay.
And everybody talks so great about it. There's great reviews, and supposedly it's sold out everywhere. But basically, what I took from it is it's set in the 30s. It's a crime noir story. There's no superheroes in it, but it's very stereotypical. And it's written by an Asian guy, but all the Asians are basically, poppy addicts, heroin addicts, or whatever. They're on the smack, and all the white people are racist. So I was like, done with it.
Right? Yeah. That sounds like something I want to spend my hard-earned money on. Yeah. So the chat says the JLI was more your style. Yes, Justice League International. That's what I like. If it's got Booster Gold in it, I'm sold, man. I'm gonna pick it up. So you better treat them right. Yeah, we mentioned Fables earlier. What do you think about Fables? I really like that. That's a series that I've enjoyed.
I didn't read a lot of it, actually. My daughter read a lot of it. I would read a couple issues here and there, but when I went to the comic shop, when I was going on a regular basis in the early 2000s, I was picking it up for her, and she was reading it. She loves it. Yeah, she loved it.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm trying to think. What more could we talk about? What is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, that'll change on a daily basis. But if I have to go with a favorite movie of all time, it's based on the first movie I saw in theaters that I can remember seeing in theaters.
Okay.
Which was Star Wars.
Okay.
Which I can remember. I can remember it clearly that it was me, my brother, who would have been 1 or 2, my grandfather, my grandmother, my mom and dad, my uncle, and his girlfriend going to see it. That's the only time I can ever remember all of us going to a movie to see a movie. That's the only time I remember my grandparents ever going to a movie to see a movie.
Yeah,
it's probably because of that, and it's probably the memories associated with that.
I was too young to see that in the theater. I was about -13, so it didn't quite to get to see that in the theater.
I turned 50 this year.
Wow, no, man, so old.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, Star Wars. So, what do you think about all the new Star Wars stuff? Are you into the Mandalorian?
I love the Mandalorian. I watched the first episode of Bad Batch. I like that. The sequel movies, I was not a big fan of. The Force Awakens is okay. The second one, The Last Jedi, sucked horribly. And the third one, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like, it's okay.
Yeah, somewhere in between.
Yeah, it was watchable. Now, it's given me a better appreciation for the prequels.
Right. Oh, that's the thing. I hate the prequels, and my wife has never seen the prequels, and so we don't. No need to go watch them. No need to ever see them. But now I'm like, you know what? Maybe I was too harsh. Of course, I know I won't be, because when I saw the Revenge of the Sith in the theater, and I wasn't a Star Wars fan. I didn't grow up watching them. Watched way more Star Trek in my life than I'll ever watch Star Wars. But my friends, they were big Star Wars fans, and it was one of their birthdays, so we went to go see that in the theater in high school. And I remember sitting there, and I never thought about movies this way. I'd always just enjoyed movies and gotten lost in them. And I was like, this is terrible writing. Like, this script, this is bad. Like, these people don't sound like human beings. And I remember thinking this, and it was the first time I ever thought about filmmaking. And in a negative way, George Lucas probably set me on the path, which then made me want to do filmmaking and make movies and talk about film and study it and all the stuff that I've done in my life since then. He did so. He inspired me by making a terrible, terrible movie that was just awful and took me right out of it and said, this is art. This is artificial. This isn't real. I was like, whoa.
His directing. I mean, because most of the people in there are decent actors.
Yeah.
But they didn't perform decently. I think it's his directing. But sadly, I took off for all 3 prequels, took a day off work, went and saw them during the day. The Phantom Menace, I actually got interviewed by the newspaper as I came out of the theater because it was the middle of the day. And I said, I think he's telling a bigger story here. So this is just the first part. So it's going to be much better. It didn't get much better. No. And now I'm immortalized somewhere in a newspaper saying
that's how hindsight's 50-50, as I always like to say.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's embarrassing. It's quite embarrassing for you. No, I didn't watch them. I didn't see the Star Wars movies as a kid. Most of my peers watched them as a youth. They saw them when they were real young, and I didn't see them until I was a teenager. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I enjoyed them as films, and I thought they were good stories. And then that's about as far as it's ever gone for me. I own the originals, and I watch them from time to time. I've tried to read the expanded universe novel here or there, and I've never been able to actually stick with it to actually get through the book. Not that they're bad or anything. I just didn't have much interest in it. And so for me, the first thing outside of those 3 movies that I really liked was The Mandalorian. And that's because I saw it as someone actually going to not just taking inspiration from Star Wars, saying, oh, we're going to make a Star Wars movie. But instead they looked at what Star Wars was built on. They looked past the surface level and like, what was it built on? A Western themes and sort of Eastern samurai themes sort of mixed together and like with it for this new thing. And they really doubled down on those elements. And I think that's what worked, is because it finally felt like there was something cohesive outside of those original 3 movies.
It seemed like Favreau and Filoni seemed to have a passion for it too. I guess, that definitely helps. If you have a passion and you're trying to create something, it's going to be better than someone just doing it for money. And they like the sequels. I mean,
I'm going to subvert your expectations. I don't want my expectations subverted. I just want a good story. Can I have that instead?
Like I'm a huge Moon Knight fan. I'm looking forward to the TV series when it comes out, but I'm a little worried.
Right. I don't know. Disney, as soon as they buy anything, it's like, I'm just like, it's probably going to be terrible. And with the Marvel universe, I'm first of all, I'm not a huge Marvel fan as it is. Like, enjoy every once in a while the X-Men or that's about it. That's about all the Marvel comics I own are just mostly X-Men comics. But every once in a while, I'll pick something up somebody recommend. Like, I think you recommended to me Kraven's Last Stand. I think that was
Kraven's Last Hunt. Yeah,
Last Hunt. Yes. And I haven't gotten that to Spider-Man one, but I haven't picked that up. But I plan on it eventually. But for me, it's like Marvel. I'm like, yeah, the animated shows I watched as a kid, but mostly I was about Batman and Superman. And so the Marvel movies, I've always sort of been, all right, I'm going to see it, and if it's good, I'll say it's good. If it's bad, I'll say it's bad. And for the most part, I'm just like, they're so similar. They're so similar. And then after Guardians of the Galaxy, everything just became Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like everybody was telling a joke. Everybody had to be cracking jokes and cracking wise, and nothing could be taken serious. And it's like, okay, you have all of these different characters, and all of the stories are the same thematically. There's no different themes. The thing about comic books that's fun, at least from my perspective as a DC guy, is that you have these books with separate identities, and not everything feels the same. Like, the worlds interact, and that's cool. But you pick up a Batman comic, and you don't expect him to be running around in the daytime like Superman, like punching giant monsters. You expect him to be in a dark alley fighting a criminal or doing investigation and things. It's like there was these different elements to those works. With the Marvel movies, it's like I know there's differences between these books, but it sure don't seem like it from the movies. And I'm tired of them, to be honest with you.
Well, I saw the trailer for the new Suicide Squad, and you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's what I thought I was watching. I mean, because Gunn's doing it, so it seemed like he was doing Guardians of the Galaxy with the Suicide Squad character.
I think that's what they hired him to do ultimately, is they're trying to go that direction. And I just, Batman vs. Superman is not a great film, but I was much more interested in it, and I'm much more willing to rewatch that than I am Thor Dark World or Doctor Strange or any of these like second, third tier super,
I've watched Doctor Strange once. I thought it was okay. Dark World, that one just wasn't that good. But, it's Thor, though. I mean, honestly, I didn't think they could do anything with Thor if anyone would even go see Thor.
Well, so, I always thought that, why are you making it, like, cosmic? Like, why is he more of an alien than this fantasy thing? What if they had gone more into fantasy and less into making everything look technological and like, oh, we have all these explanations and stuff. Just make it as fantasy epic. That would have been super different. Like, have it so that he's not going from world to world, but he's in a fantasy setting and he's doing this stuff. And then later on, you can bring in some of the, what's his name, Beta Ray Bill and things like that. These other elements.
That would be cool.
But they just eventually went to making it into Guardians of the Galaxy with Thor Ragnarok, where all the Thor stuff is so boring in that. And the only parts that people actually like are the parts on that world, on the planet Hulk world. Like, that's the parts that everybody likes, is like, oh, they're fighting in a gladiator place and Jeff Goldblum's there and it's funny. And then the rest of it's like, oh, well, what's the overall plot? Like, why is he there in the first place? I don't know. You don't remember the fight with his sister?
How Hulk even got there.
Yeah, it's just like, there's so many missed opportunities with how they've done things. And I just like Jeff Potts, who watches my show a lot, watches these streams a lot. He likes Iron Man 2 and 3. And I'm just like, I don't even remember. I barely remember what happens. All I know is Mickey Rourke has whips and a bird. That's all I know about the second one. The third one.
Toothpick all the time too.
Yeah. And the third one.
Third one's so bad.
I don't remember. It's like, was the what? Like, I don't remember what happens, man. I honestly, I just.
Third one had the fake.
I
was going to say Mandalorian.
Me too.
But
the Mandarin.
The Mandarin.
And then it's like, well, no, the Mandarin's not Ben Kingsley. It's actually Guy Pearce. And then now, supposedly in Eternals that's coming out, there's actually going to be a real Mandarin. It's like, what?
Oh, he's going to be in Shang-Chi.
Oh, that is, Shang, yeah.
Yeah, and the rings that are supposed to be on his fingers are on his arms. But apparently the rings originally came from Fin Fang Foom, which is a giant dragon anyway, so I guess they would have to be kind of big. So I don't know. The toy aisles are flooded with all kinds of toys from that movie, and it's not even out yet, and I don't.
It doesn't look interesting at all. I think if you took away the Marvel branding from it in the trailer, I wouldn't even know it was a Marvel movie. I have no idea. It just looks like a generic action film. And it may be the best one ever. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But when I look at the trailer, what I think is generic Hollywood action film, not anything special. And it reeks to me, as someone who hates communist China, it reeks to me as pandering to communist China. It's like, oh, you saying we can't make a story about somebody from China? No, I'm saying there's a lot more properties out there that you could be using. Why'd you pick this one? And then I don't know if you heard about this. The Eternals director, Chloe Zhao, she won the Academy Award this year for Nomadland. She won it for Best Director. And she's directed Eternals.
Even know the Oscars had happened.
Yeah, they did.
Like a couple days later, I was like, what?
Nobody did. Nobody watched them. They were the worst ratings of the Oscars ever.
Did movies come out? I don't remember them.
And so Chloe Zhao, who's a Chinese American, she immigrated from China. She lives here now. She directed a movie called Nomadland, which won a bunch of awards, and she won Best Director. And Disney had hired her to do Eternals, and it's already in production, and it's going to be released later this year. And the Chinese Communist Party has canceled Chloe Zhao. She's not even allowed to be mentioned on Chinese social media. So it could be a huge misstep for Disney, who hired this woman thinking, awesome. We can hire this woman. We'll get
We
woke
get the
points.
Chinese money.
Yeah, and then we'll get the Chinese money because they'll push her because it's a Chinese director, and then she got canceled by the Chinese Communist Party. So we'll see if it even is allowed to get released. I imagine it will, but it would be funny if China's like, nope, our people are going to pirate it anyways. So
that might be what happens. And I used to watch South Park a lot. I haven't watched it in years until this week because I watched the Corona special.
Okay.
And then it made me watch some older, last seasons. And there's like some episodes with Randy going to China to try, get weed business because everybody wants the China money. And he runs into Mickey Mouse over there trying to get business.
That's funny, man.
I was like, oh, this is like a year old. I'm like, man, this is ripped from the headlines today, this minute.
It's like those guys have been doing that for like over 20 years. That was like 1996, 97, somewhere around there.
Because I was like season 24 or something. I was like, this hasn't been on for 24 years. And I looked back and like, yeah, it has.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's been going on that long. And I think because of the nature of it, that they've always been very topical, and they sometimes they finish making the show like 30 minutes before it's supposed to air and stuff. Yeah, and they've always been like cut right at the edge of what's happening in the news. That show has maintained a level of quality that some other animated adult sitcoms have not really managed to do it. Not that I've watched South Park in a long time, but when I see a clip from it, I'm like, yeah, that seems about the same kind of show they were putting on 15 years ago.
Yeah. It's about the same, just current topics. I was surprised, and I laughed quite a bit on the recent one that came out. Oh wow. Yeah, but I'm not going to go start watching it again on a regular basis. Yeah.
So is there anything you're watching right now that you said you watched the new Star Wars animated show on Disney Plus, Bad
I really
Batch.
liked it, and I didn't know, of course I don't know anything about the characters, so it was interesting. I think there's only one lightsaber in it, so it differs from just all lightsabers all the time. So like the Mandalorian, there wasn't a lot of lightsaber action in that until most recent season. But
right, and my thing I liked so I watched Bad Batch as well, and I agree with you. I've tried to watch the Clone Wars show. I don't know if you've ever watched that or not, but
the original one with the really bad animation.
No, that one and the 3D animated one, and I've never been able to because I just don't have any interest in the prequel line stories, with Anakin and Obi-Wan, because I hate that. I hate the way that George built that part of the history in the prequels. I think it's just terrible in the way that he developed it. So it's not interesting. And then I get bored of the lightsaber battles and seeing these Jedis run around. And the most interesting parts of the originals, I thought, were it's not like there was Jedis running around. You barely see any Jedi action until the last movie, Return of the Jedi, surprise, surprise. And otherwise it's like a farmer running around trying to learn how to be a wizard and a cowboy, smuggler type. And that's the thing about the Mandalorian and then the Bad Batch, which I watched, that it could be any universe. Except for it's in the Star Wars universe. You could tell this story of these guys that are finished with battling the war, and now they're done with that war, and yet they find themselves on the wrong side of the people that they fought the war for. And there's a lot of stories like that. And so I think in some way, some of these things, they're thinking about story first and not universe. And I think that has worked to their advantage with these two.
Yeah, well, typically, when the Mandalorian was coming out, we watched that every week. As soon as I got home from work, boom, we're eating dinner in front of the TV just to watch that. I did enjoy the WandaVision.
Okay.
For the most part. I mean, it started out horribly slow.
No, I enjoyed the first episodes. And then as soon as it started to get like outside of the pastiches of sitcoms, I was like, I'm done. That was when it started to get hard for me to watch. It's like, it's just turning into every other Marvel thing. Give me more of this sitcom stuff and the weirdness, and that's what I was enjoying. But
yeah, but I as a series, I ended up liking it. I'd watch the videos about people predicting what was going to happen. I think too many people built a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of people like, oh man, it's going to be awesome.
Did you see that little cartoon opening?
Right.
Ooh, that's the Grim Reaper there. But I watched Falcon and Winter Soldier.
I literally couldn't get past the first episode. I watched 10 minutes of it and I was so bored. I turned it off and I haven't gone back to it.
I liked about 80% of every episode. there was stuff in every episode. I was like, stop it.
Well, I read an interview this morning and I almost put it into my FlyFox News show this morning. I actually recorded it and then I cut it out. I was like, it just doesn't fit. But it was about the actor Anthony Mackie, and he was talking about how they're going to put more politics stuff into their work and stuff. And I was like, all right, this is dumb. But something that he said was, I found it absolutely stupid. He's like, I think a black man today would have I don't know what word he used, but he's like, he'd be hesitant to put on this symbol. And I was like, basically the idea of the stars and stripes. And I'm like, you realize that thousands of black men and women join the military every year and they swear allegiance to uphold the Constitution and all of these things. And they're serving this country faithfully. In what world would a soldier who already wears a uniform then be hesitant to put on another uniform that represents the country? He already does. He was already proud of it. It's like you're ruining the character for the sake of stupidity, and you're not thinking about who this person would be in real life. Because a person that many years who's been that dedicated to serving his country doesn't just like, I hate my country now. It usually doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
It's
sad politics have to be brought into everything other than politics.
Right. And in such a bad way too. Well, politics in something done right or used as an element to put characters in a certain position can be done really well. You think about something like Firefly, that show where it really has a political basis. These were people that fought in a rebellion or a revolutionary war against this regime, and they've lost, and now they're out on the fringes trying to find freedom and trying to avoid things. And there's political aspects to that, and there's political themes to it, but it's not done in such a way as to just bash you over the head with it.
Right. That's what I hate. A lot of stuff, a lot of the comic books I've picked up recently, well, not a lot of them, but a few of them, there's been, slap your face crap in them. I mean, it's like, you're going to like this way, and that's the way it is, because if you think different, you're wrong. Well, everybody's got opinions. I don't care if you put your politics in your comics. But, do as a small undertone, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Don't just force people to think that's the only way things can be. I picked up Geiger, Image comic Geiger. Came out a couple weeks ago. It's actually a good book about some kind of nuclear holocaust that happens. Nobody knows how it happened. But at the beginning, the guy that turns into this guy who survives the explosion, he's trying to get his family into a bunker. So I'm reading it. Oh, that's pretty cool. Then he goes out and gets the dog because the dog got away. So he comes back with the dog. Before he can get to the bunker with the rest of the family, gets shot in the leg by this couple in a Mercedes. And when you see the couple, as soon as I saw the panel, it's drawn just like that picture everybody saw on the news last year from St. Louis, where I'm at. It was them. He's holding a gun. She's got her pistol. I'm like, really? I mean, it could have been anyone, but you had to pick that. Right.
And like my favorite novel of all time, which I want to talk about in depth with somebody someday on this Tales from the Silent Planet type of show. I just have to find somebody that likes it as much as me. It's called One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and it's by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who is a Russian writer who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. If you didn't know, he's pretty cool. But he was in the gulags, and this book is about a man in the gulags in Soviet Russia. Obviously, it's inherently political. It is about a guy in a Soviet gulag. It's a criticism of the Soviet Union. It's an indictment, and he would go on later to do more work about that stuff. But it is about Ivan Denisovich. It's about his life in that day. It's from his point of view, the things he thinks, all of these things. And it's not done in such a way to make every single Soviet into this caricature of evil. It's not done in such a way as to make I'm just going to put my opponents in this mold of this caricature, and I'm just going to paint them as totally corrupt, because he didn't believe that. It reminds me, I've been reading the book lately by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a Jew in the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz, and he was in some other concentration camps. And
oh dear God!
Yeah, and he survived. Obviously, wrote the book, and he was a psychiatrist. And what he writes in there, if you said that stuff and you put somebody else's name as having quoted, they say, "Oh, that's a Nazi said that," because what he said was there is only two races of men, decent men and indecent men. And he said there were indecent. This is Viktor Frankl, a Jew that was in the Holocaust. His wife and his family, every member of his family except for I think one sister died. His wife was murdered. Terrible, horrible things happened to this man. And he said that there were indecent Jews in the concentration camps who would sell out their fellow Jews so that they could live another day. And there were German soldiers who were decent men who in these terrible times tried to do what they could. And it's like, that's the reality of the world. The world is not, it's
not
not
black and white.
Yeah. And to paint Jordan Peterson as the Red Skull, Jordan Peterson's the Red Skull, and my opponents are evil Nazis. It's like, even people who were in the Holocaust, who were persecuted, didn't think the way that you're thinking and you're putting in your work. So maybe just, you might consider that when you write your comic, that you aren't good and they aren't totally evilly corrupt. They're not only doing evil all the time.
Mm. Well, nobody's allowed to have opinions anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think differently than someone else, you're wrong, and you're a Nazi because you think differently.
Right, because you want people to make their bed and clean their room.
I did, I'm 50 years old. I don't remember the 80s, 70s, even the 90s being like this.
No, well, I watched an interview the other day with Roger Ebert and Siskel. It wasn't really an interview. They were just talking about film criticism, and they were talking about political correctness and how it was death to the critic. They said that you cannot be politically correct and criticize anything. Like, political correctness is death to art and to criticism. And they were right. But I have a feeling that if Roger Ebert was alive today, he hadn't died of horrible cancer, absolutely horrible cancer, he would not be saying those same things, because of the way that the culture shifted, where those same cultural elites who were in those positions fighting against their version of censorship from a more traditional or conservative point of fighting against those people trying to censor them, they would turn around once they gain the power, and they have turned around and said, you know what, any type of view that isn't in line with what we think is wrong. And it's like, well, that's just the same politically incorrect talk you were talking about, but it's from the other point of view. Right. And it's really sad to see that, because that wasn't that long ago that people of that, from that perspective, were championing free speech and the ability to speak out for what you believe in, even if it's politically incorrect. So it's sad to see things have shifted, and things have gotten more overtly, and they're bad. They're bad when it comes to politics, and they put them in their art. They're just bad a lot of the time. And you go back and things were political, but they were actually good stories, and they were good films, and there was good acting going on, regardless of whether or not it was political. And now that's the agenda, is what they're pushing first. And now, do you have inclusion? Do you have diversity? It's not so much that those things are in there, it's how they do it, which is bad. It's not good. Hey,
and if you like that stuff, I got Ozma in my book. She used to be a boy, so she's transgender.
Uh-oh. What was Frank Baum, man?
There's just so much of it in your face now, and it, like I said, I'm going to be 50 this year. I don't remember it being that way, but I do remember political movies and news stories and all that. But it was more, I think it was actually research stuff, though.
Right.
People actually researched what was going on, looked into it, reported on it, instead of giving you their opinion on it. And most of the news now and what people believe is just all opinion based. There's no fact behind it.
Right. And that's something that I think stands out when people do take the time to research something. They do take the time to try to get things accurate, whether it's in fiction or in nonfiction work. It stands out. And I think that the independent movement, not just in comics, but the ability to speak independently of some corporation, some oversight board or something, has hopefully it will continue, but it has allowed for people who are willing to do the hard work to actually get their stuff out there and seen, and not have people censoring them. And that is good, but I think there's a lot to be done to keep it going. So we've got some commenters down here, and they are not so sure about this black and white. They're suspect about it. They're not sure that you're the real Eric Hawkins. I don't know.
Well, I've got to be the real Eric Hawkins. So look, back here's my little banner I take to my Comic Cons. There's a cover I colored for Miss Vicky and her Cutie Commandos. I drew that cover right there as a sketch cover. There's who else is going to have Zombieful World of Oz comics on their wall?
That's a good point. No one. Jeff,
or have one right here on their desk.
Well, I have something from Zombieful World of Oz. There we go. I have Zombieful World of Oz stuff right here.
Card, yeah.
And here we go. So in your newest campaign, you actually offered a campaign perk to back where you get the book and no extras. And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
The stretch goals.
No stretch goals. No stretch goals,
nothing.
nothing.
People that don't want the crap.
Which is me. But then one of your stretch goals was a behind the scenes book. And I was like, dang it, no stretch goals. So I got him back the stretch goals. Want to get all the crap I don't want.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
I listened to you on that too, because you said that's the stuff you like. So.
Yeah. I
tease you with this, but I'm going to give you this.
But yeah, man, if you guys haven't backed Eric's books in the past, you haven't given it a chance, I really think you ought to. And like we said earlier, you can go to Webtoons and you can read the first issue and you can get an idea for it of what it's like and whether or not you're going to like it. And I think you will. What's funny is Eric's book represent a lot of things that I generally don't like. I generally don't like zombies. I generally don't like serialized comics where I have to wait to read them. I want to just get it at the end. But Eric manages to convince me to buy the books regardless of those general things that I like, because he's actually making a quality book that's enjoyable book to book. And
I thought about trying. Well, okay, issue 4 is definitely going to be a standalone story. I thought about maybe trying to do that in the future books, make them, they're a story arc, but they're more standalone stories within the story arc. Because waiting a year, I forget what I wrote in the last one. That's why I've got number 2 here.
Okay, what did I say?
Let me look at that. Okay, yep, okay.
So what is the Stone Door? What's all that about? So Stone Door Comics. What's that?
Stone Door Studios. I got on my shirt here too.
Look at that.
So, obviously I had to come up with some kind of name for my comic book company or publishing. And my whole family's from Tennessee. I wanted to kind of, pay homage to that. And the mountain range they're in is they're on Mount Eagle Mountain. If you've watched Smokey and the Bandit, that mountain is in the first song of the movie. Mm-hmm. But there's a park there called Stone Door. I thought it sounded cool. I played around with the logo a bunch, took some pictures of Stone Door, went out there and took pictures, found pictures on the internet, and it just never looked right until I did the retro cover for last year. And I kind of copied the old EC logo and made that my Stone Door logo. But that's where Stone Door comes from. It's Tennessee.
Awesome, man. So we're reading Baby Bear, Baby Bear. What do you see? Yeah, it's a pretty good one. He was saying all the animal names as best he could. Yeah, man, I like seeing all these different guys come up with a company, a little logo to put on their books, and I think that's the most enjoyable part. I always liked the DC logo when I was growing up, or seeing these various branding things. So I got a different type of a show I can do on my channel. totally different branding. It's gonna look totally different. I'm gonna have this and that. That's right. I love that, making those things, even if I'm terrible at it. So, Eric, what is something that you can recommend to people, right, other than your book? Other than your book, I mean, let's not be self-serving here. That you would recommend to people right now that they should go out and pick up, other than Gary Shipman, who everybody should always buy. Gary Shipman's
Always
comics.
back Gary Shipman. Jason Robinson's a spectacular artist, and Secret Comics presents on Indiegogo right now. Luke Stone has just launched his new book, and it's Hybrid Sons of Gods. I think this one's The Killing Fields, part 2 of 1. He's got, this will be like his 8th book or something.
So is it about Pol Pot then?
It's
just a deep dive. Let's go on. Let's move on.
Actually, his trade paperback, he did a trade of the first 6 issues for 7 issues. I did 4 pages of art in that one. Yeah, to help him out. What else is Vestry 3 just launched?
That's right. There's a lot of good stuff out there, and I think what I think people should do is they ought to look at these things out to consider things they might not have previously considered. Just because the more broad you read, you might find something you like.
Definitely. I mean, I've been picking up in comic book stores and it's because I'm reviewing comics now, so I'm picking up more stuff than I have in years. I've been leaning away from Marvel and DC and trying to pick up smaller studios. Now they don't always have the smaller studios of books I want to get when I get to the comic shop. So I have picked up a lot of Image, and the Image stuff is a lot different than it was in the 90s. I mean, there's a lot more horror related, fantasy stuff like that, which is really cool. So I'm really digging period stuff, fantasy stuff, horror comics that I was never into in the 90s and 80s.
Yeah, when I go and buy comics nowadays, I'm usually looking for something interesting that's not superhero related stuff, or I'm going back to, because I didn't read a lot of the superhero comics when I was a kid. I just whatever was at the library or whatever somebody gave us, they didn't want anymore. That was what I had, or Archie. That's what I read. And so a lot of the stuff, anything from before I was an adult, I didn't have a chance to read a lot of that stuff. So I go and pick that up. But when I get something new, it's most likely going to be something independent and interesting. You mentioned Jason Robinson. He's, of course, working with Nasser Rabadi on Secret Comics Presents. And I read Nasser's comics. He actually sent them to me. And I read the first ones, Stardust and Trixie Kane.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually liked them. I think that because Nasser approaches it as a writer and not an artist, like a lot of people are trying to be both artist and writer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, Eric.
Yeah.
Is that he approaches it from a totally different side, which is horror related. And it felt to me, I got the feeling of like when you watch The Twilight Zone, this anthology idea. There's these little stories, or and you watch some horror anthology show when you were a kid. And
you hear the baby crying in my end this time.
And I think that's kind of cool about what Nasser does, is that they're totally different, and it does feel like it's in somewhat a Twilight Zone or an Outer Limits or something, where you're getting this little creepy thing, and then you're done. It's complete, and there's no I got to wait to see what happens to insert superhero's name here. No, it feels complete, and so that's what I liked about that.
Well, I got a book you might like that's funding right now. It's on Kickstarter. It's called Grim 101. I do know the creator. He does all watercolor. He describes it as an illustrated dark comedy romance with a supernatural twist.
Well, there you go.
And it's by Ted Davies, and Ted Davies is he kind of reminds me of you a bit. So
handsome, smart, intelligent.
I'm actually very smart, very intelligent. I was on his show. He wanted to do a Star Wars show with me because we both launched our books about the same time. He launched the day before me, and he funded in a day, so he's already funded too. And then I funded, but he wanted to do it like a Star Wars special because we're the same age too. And I said, well, I work Tuesday. If they catch me streaming, they're going to fire me. He goes, well, you want pre-recorded on Saturday? I'm like, yeah, we did that. So we got on, and I put some of my Star Wars stuff behind me here. I had my big Darth Vader mug. We talked Star Wars. We talked my book. We talked his book. But it's Grim 101. It's on Kickstarter. It's very. I mean, he's funded. He's already got 45 backers, $1,800. The only thing, he doesn't have a lot of art on it, but he's doing live streams of him painting the book and drawing the book, which is really cool. You can catch that if you follow him on Facebook or YouTube as well. But it is very cool. The art I've seen looks really good, and especially the cover he shows. It just drew my attention right away because it's very stylistic as well. Where my art, I'll admit, my art's comic book art.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing stylistic about it. It's comic book art.
Well, it's like
I mean, you look, you can see the zombie right there. I mean, it's basic comic book art.
Hey, man, that when the story is good, it doesn't matter. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I will maintain, like, you go back and you read some of these Image things, and this has got me in trouble with people in the past. When I did Image Comics Week and I reviewed a bunch of the old Image stuff, and everyone was like, "Oh, you don't understand Wildcats. You don't get I actually like Gen 13. You don't get whatever Youngblood." I was just like, "Oh my word, these things are terrible, man. I could barely read them." That the art is secondary to the story. If the story's no good, it doesn't matter if it has the best art in the world. Like, it's pretty pictures, but I'm never going to read it again. And we're going to read Baby Bear. Baby Bear, what do you see again? Okay. Let's see if people can see it. You need to see it, don't you? Baby Bear, what do you see? I see a red fox slipping by me. Red fox, what do you see? I see a flying squirrel gliding by me. Flying squirrel, what do you see? I see a mountain goat climbing near me. Mountain goat, what do you see? I see a blue heron flying by me. Blue heron, what do you see? I see a prairie dog digging by me. Prairie dog, what do you see? I see a striped skunk strutting by me. Striped skunk, what do you see? I see a mule deer running by me. Mule deer, what do you see? I see a rattlesnake sliding by me. Rattlesnake, what do you see? I see a screech owl hooting at me. Screech owl, what do you see? I see a mama bear looking at me. Mama bear, what do you see? I see a red fox, a flying squirrel, a mountain goat, a blue heron, a prairie dog, striped skunk, a mule deer, a rattlesnake, a screech owl, and my baby bear looking at me. That's what I see. I see my baby bear looking at me. All right, baby bear.
He pointed to every. I said, "Where's this? Where's this?" And he could point to every.
Oh, so you can point to every animal now. He knows all the animals. He gets smarter every single day. Yeah, man. I think.
James, Mommy will read that.
Here, Mommy's gonna read this book. Go see Mama. Yeah, man. I think there's a lot of good stuff out there, and people should just try things out. If you don't like it, you don't have to buy the person's next comic.
Oh,
Buddy, I'm
definitely.
doing things.
Yeah, a lot of people got digital levels. I mean, if you're a little worried, back a digital level, see what it looks like. Spent $5.
I think he's suitably far away now. He does not. He wants me to be done. So we've been going an hour. I think it's time to wrap up. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching. We had a ton of people in here. A lot of the usual is talking. If you've got a comment, we'll go another 10 minutes or so. If you've got a comment you'd like to get read or a question for Eric, go ahead and throw that in the chat, and we'll take those questions now. As I want you guys to get your opportunities if you have anything that you would like to say. We don't just end with the baby bear story, which is fun. I grant you. I'll try to scroll up, see if anybody's asked anything.
They're probably mocking me. They probably saw me a few, months back and go, "Hey, wasn't your beard white?"
See that they didn't know. They didn't know that you.
Oh, you're in black and white, but it's dark and black and white.
That's true.
If it was its natural color, still, it would look weird.
Let's see. I don't see anybody asking questions. So apparently, let's see. Jeff Potts says, "I'd like to ask a question, but no one likes my questions." I'm sorry.
Ask the question.
Come on, Jeff Potts. He's probably gonna be like, "Oh, what did you think of Iron Man 3? I love it." Which which I always say this. I did a video game podcast that was gaining steam before the baby came, and then we had to sort of put the show on indefinite hiatus, and it's never quite returned in the same way. But I did a fairly decently listened to podcast about video games, and my sign off for it, I said, was play the games the way you want to play them. Basically, don't care what other people think about what you like. If you like a movie, or you like a comic book, or you like a video game and you enjoy playing that and you don't enjoy playing other things, you don't have to. Just because you like one comic book doesn't mean you have to like all the comic books. Just because you like one Star Wars movie doesn't mean you have to like all of Star Wars.
And because other people didn't like it doesn't mean you can't like it. I will tell you a Star Wars movie I actually like. I don't think it's as bad as everybody says, as long as you don't think it's about Han Solo. Solo as just a movie, I kind of dig it. But if you think it's Han Solo, I hate that.
I've tried multiple times to watch it, and I stop about. It's the same as Falcon and Winter Soldier. 10 minutes in, I was done. I was like, all right, I'm out of this.
I didn't mind it as long as I didn't think about being
just not Han Solo.
Just a caper movie in the Star Wars universe.
All right, so there are some questions being thrown in here. Andrew asks, what is the biggest draw of the Oz universe? So I think, what is the biggest draw factor that drew you in, or you think will draw people in? I guess would be the question.
I think it's the trilogy of characters, the main heroes, the Tin Man, who requires to have heart, the Scarecrow he needs his brains, and the Lion that needs courage, and I think that's what brought people. That's what people mostly remember about the movie,
right?
And that's what I think they remember about the characters in general. So I mean, it's those three things and those three characters more so than Dorothy, I think. And then I draw Dorothy in the bustiers.
That draws them in. All right, so we've got another question here from Mr. Dillard Draws.
I know him.
So he says, I have a question for Mr. Eric Hussein Hawkins. Why won't you show us your birth certificate?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I was born in Detroit, Michigan on July 9th, 1971.
Well, thank God you escaped that hellhole.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
just
outside
St. Louis and live in Illinois now.
Yeah. This poor fella here is a Lions fan, everyone. So pray for him. He's never had he's had one winning season in 30 years. And
we've had like 4.
Well, we're sitting pretty over in Titletown until Aaron Rodgers leaves.
When Wayne Fontes was still the coach, they said, we're going to fire Wayne Fontes if you guys don't make the playoffs again. They didn't make the playoffs, lose the first game of the playoffs.
Nice.
Then they finally fired him.
That sounds about right.
A couple of years doing that, they didn't care anymore.
All right, so Jeff Potts has a question. He says, okay, which is better, the Captain Marvel movie or Iron Man 3?
Oh, God.
I haven't seen Captain Marvel, so I wouldn't know.
I've seen it.
I don't watch every Marvel movie that comes out, guys. I don't care.
Okay, I really can't pick one that's better, but I have seen bits and pieces of Iron Man 3 multiple times since I've watched it, and I've only watched Captain Marvel once.
So there you go. There's his answer. I think he's leaning towards Iron Man 3, and I'll go ahead and vote Iron Man 3 because it's inevitably better than something I haven't seen.
Well, Ben Kingsley, I mean, even though he's not the character you want him to be, he's pretty funny in it, especially when they start finding out he's the actor. So,
terrible.
Yeah, Iron Man 3 is better than Captain
All right,
Marvel.
Let's see. We've got some more questions in here, I think. Andrew wants to know, how do you feel about Motor City Dan Campbell?
I don't know who that is.
I don't know either.
I mean, I moved away when I was 2.
There you go. Dillard's found us out. He says that I didn't demand proof. Why am I covering for Eric Hussein Hawkins? How much are you paying me? Actually, I'm paying him for this comic, which you guys should go support. The link's in the description. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my other channels, obviously this is FlyFoxPro, Upon the Chaos political channel, go ahead and
which is very fun to watch, very entertaining.
Yeah, a lot of people have
good
liked
news.
it.
I like it.
There you go. Highest recommendation from Eric Hawkins here, and then Coin Egg Geek, which is a video game channel that I run with my friend Elliot. Those are two channels where you can get more FlyFoxPro content. I mean, just distilled into video games and political format. Somebody said the other day I was streaming on Coin A Geek. I was playing a video game. We were this person that was watching. They said we were sort of having a conversation, and I said, "Yeah, FlyFoxPro. It's sort of just, I don't really know what it's all about, but these other channels have a more distinct identity." And they said, "Oh, that's a personality channel. It's you." And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds about right. I can just do whatever I want, and people accept it. At least this core audience of about 10 to 13 people, depending on if I have an interesting topic, they'll watch." So thanks everybody for joining us today. Again, if you haven't backed Eric's comic, go ahead and do it. And you are going to be launching an Indiegogo campaign as well, right?
I'm not actually going to launch an Indiegogo. What I'm going to do, it will be available on Indiegogo.
Okay.
My in-demand store from issue 2 is still open. So I'm taking down all the stuff that's on there and putting up issue 3 stuff.
All right, so that is going to be available after the Kickstarter campaign is done. If you guys are some of these people that don't like to support Kickstarter and you only want to use Indiegogo, it will be available in a different avenue.
And here's why I'm doing that. Everybody told me after issue 1, well, if you would have had an Indiegogo, I would have backed it. So issue 2, I launched Kickstarter and the Indiegogo. It took 30 days on Indiegogo to raise the amount of money I raised in 2 hours on Kickstarter.
There you go, man.
And I struggled to even get the goal there.
So that sounds like a good opportunity for people, and I'm sure you could probably just message Eric and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy this. How much do I pay you directly?" Wow, and I'll send you a check, and he'll do it now. All right, guys.
I've had people do that.
There you go.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh yeah.
And
I don't need to have a book to come on. We can talk about it.
That's right. We'll talk about Star Wars. Yeah, that's Star Wars. That's right.
Somewhere,
Or Star Trek.
uncharted region
I
of a
like
planet
Star Trek as
called
well.
Earth.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
I did too, man. I appreciate it.
And remember, my friend, future events such as these will affect you in the future.
Time and space. Contact has been established. We now transmit you direct to
Does it help to have a guy that's going to show his face and not just an icon the whole time?